I'm surprised there isn't a noughties band called Coffee Table. Please never breathe. I mean,
Yes.
there should be, shouldn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, everybody out there. Welcome back to another episode of the Audiophiles. It's Andy and it's John, and we are going to discuss, you guessed it, some music. So, John, you're going to be offering up something for me to go off and listen and react to, and then we're going to come back and discuss it. What are we going to be checking out today, my friend?
Okay, it's time to go back to The Mighty Fall. This one's slightly different to stuff you've listened to before, so I thought I'd give you another aspect of The Fall. And the song is called New Puritan, and this is the Peel session version.
Oh, good. Okay, cool. Peel session. All right. Well, yeah, I'm always this is a broad term, but I'm always intrigued by the stuff that I hear from The Fall, and not just musically, but very much lyrically as well, because it's Marky Smith, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, a very
MES.
interesting character from everything I've learned from you over the last year plus. So yeah, I'm interested to hear some more. So I will go off and give New Puritan a listen and come back and let you know what I think.
The grotesque peasants stop the land, and deep down inside, you know, everybody wants to like big companies. Bands send tapes to famous apes, male slags, male slates, famous apes, kick water, cater down great thoughts. The whole country is post-gram. Hail the new Puritan, righteous maelstrom.
I was just gonna say, it sounds like he's delivering his manifesto from like a podium or something. And I love the drums coming in. These drums are really great. The group chanting is kind of interesting. All I hear really is, I think, New Puritan, and then I can't make out what else they're saying. But it's interesting, especially played against his sort of assertive delivery. So yeah, let's see where this goes. Obviously, we got some time here.
Cock one. And all hardcore fiends will bang me. All decadent sins will reap discipline. You Puritan. This is the Grim Reaper, the snap at the end of the straw, with a high grim quota, your scar karma Jim. You Puritan. You Puritan. The conventional is now experimental. The experimental is now conventional. It's a dinosaur cackle, a pterodactyl cackle. In LA, a drunk is sick on Gene Vincent's star. On Hollywood Boulevard. Ha ha, ha ha. Stripping takes off in Britain's black spots. The Kensington Black Rastas run for cabs. This I've seen. You Puritan. In Britain, speaking of electric pumps, in a renovated pub, your stomach swells up before you get drunk. The bars are full of male slags. At 10:35 they play Send in the Clown. Well, so
Okay, so I didn't want to. He's just going I'm trying to catch as much of this as I can from a lyrical standpoint. And even when I am starting to, I'm also getting pulled away. My attention is by this. The guitar is really odd. It in a good way, but I guess by odd I just mean different, not like bad or like super strange or anything like that. It's just the strum patterns at times are so like kind of rudimentary and just straightforward, and then there are these like little frictious, jumps in sort of the rapidity with which or at which the chords are played, and it's just interesting the kind of manic nature of these chords that are being strung, and just the jangly nature of them as well is really interesting. And the drums, I'm really a fan of just the kind of slightly odd rhythm to this whole thing, but it works. It all works so well. It's just all a little different. But I for the most part, I'm enjoying this right now. My only qualm to this point, and it's only 2:32 into this, is that it's all kind of like there's not a lot of movement as far as like dynamics and sound, which is, that's okay if it's not, but I kind of prefer that at times, and it hasn't happened yet, but we'll see. Regardless, this is at the very least very interesting and very cool what I've gotten thus far.
When you ask your local record dealer how many bribes you took today, what you mean, what's it mean, what's it mean? What's it mean, what's it mean? You Puritan! You Puritan! Hail you Puritan! Out of Holland, come common, come oven!
Picking up on that bass a little more now.
And all hardcore fiends will die by me, and all decadent sins will reap discipline. You Puritan! You Puritan!
Nice. Tiny little keys.
You Puritan! You Puritan! You Puritan! You Puritan! You
Come on. Okay. Yeah, this is one of those ones that it's going to warrant another listen for a couple different reasons. The lyrics and trying to patch together what they can what they mean as a whole, if that's even possible, or if that's even was the was the intent when Marky Smith wrote this. But there are, like, I caught bits and really pointed, interesting lyrics throughout the song that I thought were clever. Some of them completely befuddled me, but as that's probably the case for a lot of people when they just listen to a track once by someone like Marky Smith. It probably warrants a deeper dive and further dissection. But yeah, some really interesting lyrics that I thought were enough to make me want to listen to it again to try to catch them all or make sense of those that I did catch. And just the music in this was really, I loved it a lot. It was very rhythm based. It was just rhythm guitar, kind of moving things along in very interesting, kind of toyed with ways, but very subtly toyed with ways. Same with the bass. The bass was like hardly noticeable to me for the first couple minutes of the song. Now, maybe that was just my experience of listening to it once and having my attention caught by other parts of the music, but it really seemed and felt like it built and did things in the latter 2/3 of the song that it really didn't do in the first third. The drums were really fun and an interesting choice by the drummer to kind of assemble this as kind of the canvas on which the other instruments do their thing, and Smith, delivers his lyrics over. Yeah, I wouldn't say like I'm not like I'm in love with this, because I'm not, but it's got all of these interesting things about them that could probably lend this thing to grow on me more and more as I listen to it. It's certainly got promise, and it's got like gobs of interesting little things that would keep me, I would think, interested and make the song kind of evergreen in that regard. But yeah, hopefully John can put together some of these very wild their lyrics that I caught, and kind of, dare I say, get in the head of Marky Smith when it comes to telling me about this track and the lyrics and sort of the backstory therein. So let's get back to him.
Well, now you have returned
from
from this morning's lecture by Mr. Smith.
Yeah.
What did you make of it?
Well, I said this to you off camera, and I'm probably going to reiterate this throughout, but I've come to find that The Fall are just one of those bands that are, in a way, they're not really great for reaction channels, because it's like you're only listening to it one time and you need to revisit it a couple times at the very least, to get a stronger, not even understanding of the song, but even how you feel about the song. So like, bear that in mind, that I have a desire to and a want to revisit this, and I'm sure I will. But this is just how I felt and what came to me upon my one listen of this track.
I will say this: we're both respectful of each other's sort of musical tastes and offerings up, because 99 times out of 100, we really like the track that we're giving off. So we're, always give it a go. However, I will take the pressure off you and say I'd be astounded if I thought you loved this track, but I think it's an interesting track. And as such, I would say you probably get bits and pieces from it on a first listen, but I wouldn't expect you to say, yeah, this is.
Yeah.
I would actually would not be surprised if you found this really annoying.
You know,
You
it's
know,
so weird because there are parts of it that I loved, and there were parts that annoyed me.
yeah,
So
yeah,
so I guess if you want to throw all that into a blender and come out and say, yeah, I found it interesting as a nice catch-all for all of that, because if
yeah.
I hated it or didn't like it, I would say first to you before I came back here. Like I'd be like, John, but but no, it's
Sorry,
I
it
really did
died on
like
the
it. I
table.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I really did. I loved aspects of it, but as I'll tell you as I go on here, there were parts of it that made me go, hmm. But the song starts and we get this.
I think the information that I'll provide afterwards will enlighten you quite a bit.
And that is another thing that I said I believe in my reaction is I'm sure learning about this will help me piece some things together, and some of those things will be my feelings toward the song. But yeah, we get this really, and honestly, one of the shining parts of this song for me musically was this really interesting drum pattern that kind of like carried everything with it, because there bits of it are like not the drums but bits, all these pieces that come in are kind of um disparate and disjointed at some points, but and they vary a little bit here and there, and they do a lot of playful, but the drums just hold it all. It's like this binding agent, but it's a very interesting binding agent. This isn't just this is some really interesting stuff that this drummer is doing, and I liked it a lot. And then we get this sort of accompanied by this semi-distant group singing or group chanting. And I assume they're saying New Puritan, and then I don't catch the rest of what's being said by them. And then Marky Smith joins the mix, delivering the opening lines, just like some political leader delivering a manifesto via
Yes.
megaphone at a podium. It was just very like I just instantly saw like authoritarian, almost dictator like visage in my head when I saw it. It made me laugh. It made me chuckle, especially because of what you've told me about him as a person. He kind of has some dictator kind of. He's an authoritarian figure over his art. So,
Yeah.
And just this it goes with the gatekeepery kind of like slightly looking down the nose points that he makes throughout this whole idea of delivering it in this it's artistically it's very clever, and it makes sense to me why he's doing this. Now I don't know if he's doing it from a serious standpoint or he's taking the piss out of himself, but that's what he's doing, and it is clever, and it makes me laugh. After he, and this is sort of like the coup de grace for the whole, where it's saying when he says hail the new Puritan, like that, just hail anything. It is like, okay, all right, buddy, you're on the nail has been firmly hit by the hammer here. So he says, yeah, hail the new Puritan maelstrom cook one, or something to that effect. We are introduced to these jangly guitar chords. That's quite the portmanteau.
Guitar's a new word.
Yeah, smash them together. And there's something about like this, the guitar tone in this too, where really you hear the jangle the whole way through with every, and it's nothing fancy. It's all kind of playing with timing and how and strum speed and rapidity, and that kind of is the whole thing that provides variance to the guitar throughout most of this song, really. And at times I adored that, like especially when I would notice like the little minor details and the changes of the guitar. But then there were times where I'm like, do something, like I'm poking it, like go bigger. So that's a perfect example of how I had this inner like dialogue with myself, almost an argument of like pros versus cons when it came to this tune. And so yeah, the guitars, the guitar teases this extra friction in the strumming here and there, and there's this like chiming, almost disjointed keynote that makes occasional appearances, and it feels like the pace is slightly quickened, and there's something manic about the way the music comes to the edge of breaking loose at points, but doesn't quite kick off. And again, that's me with a stick going, do something, because I really wanted to just and I know that they probably intentionally dodged doing that. But it's just my own preference. I would have loved if it just like blew up. So then the Smith's vocals return around the 4:43 mark, and he echoes this refrain of "You Puritan" or "New Puritan," which would make sense, and eventually hits this like, and you and I have talked about this before about his spoken word and how I don't really gravitate to spoken word often. Yeah, our boy Marky Smith should stick
All
to
is forgiven.
the spoken word. Yeah, stick to the spoken word shit. Because this falsetto was flatter than a 2x4. And it was barely discernible too when he went up there, and I'm like, oh man, that's hilarious. I laughed. And again, the guitar.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
The phrase "God loves a trier." I think that is the bit that disproves it. I mean, please don't try anymore.
yeah, there's no sign of God's love when he went for that high note. No. But yeah, the frictious guitar strumming kicks up a bit, and Marky Smith says something about the self-copulation of your lousy record collection. And these are like he's winning me over with these hilarious little digs that are eye-catching. Now, some of this shit, like he references a dinosaur and a pterodactyl at one point. I'm like, you fucking lost me here, dude. You fucking lost me. But then he brings me back with some other shit, and I'm like, all right. So that now, again, this broad term that we often bandy about is completely apropos here, where I'm just interested. Like, what the fuck does a pterodactyl have to do with the same kind of shit I'm catching over here, where he's like throwing out like haymakers at people, and it's just over their music, and it's just I don't know, interesting to me. So musically, he then says New Puritan coffee table LPs never breathe, and I loved that line. Like, that shit made me laugh so hard. Like a coffee table book never gets opened. It's almost there as a decoration. God forbid you're ever in a situation where you really need to reach out to a coffee table book and open the goddamn thing. Like, no one wants to do that. Imagine how fucking bored you'd be if that's your form of entertainment.
I'm surprised there isn't a noughties band called Coffee Table LPs Never Breathe. Yes. I mean, they should be, shouldn't they?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, that line made me laugh. And musically, the song continues for a bit, following a lot of the same blueprint it had throughout its entirety. And then it finishes with this like resonant chord strike and drum hit. And as I sort of said before, there are bits of the song I really, really enjoyed, and yet there are aspects of it that kind of, I don't know, let me down is a strong word, but like leave me wanting more. Or perhaps I'm just not grasping them in the one listen. And if I listen to it more, I would determine eventually that it is okay as itself, as a finished package. I enjoyed a lot of the lyrics, even if as a whole I couldn't make them all make sense or attach them to one cohesive theme, moral, or story. Marky Smith he's peppered in certain blurbs or one-liners that I thought were powerful, evocative, or both. But as a whole, left me kind of scratching my head as how you glue all these pieces together to make a quilt or a finished product, right? So lines like bands send tapes to famous apes, male slags, male slates, famous apes again. All decadent sins will reap discipline. The conventional is now experimental. The experimental is now conventional. In LA, a drunk is sick on Gene Vincent's star on Hollywood Boulevard, and that aforementioned coffee table LPs never breathe are all varying degrees of evocative, pointed, and observationally clever. And so I enjoyed them very, very much. I liked these lines a lot. I thought they were hilarious. And I know that his fans, and probably no one more when he was around than himself, considered him quite the wordsmith and penman. So I did have a lot of appreciation for these lyrics that I caught. But yeah, there are others like the aforementioned pterodactyl one that just hit me like, what the fuck am I listening to? So there are lots of stuff I adored. Those drums come to mind, also the tone of the guitar. But for me and my taste, there wasn't enough, honestly, musical diversity for a 7.5-minute song. And I know this is a personal preference, and I know it makes it inherently subjective. So there's no need to like argue preferences or whatever. I'm just saying that I would have appreciated the song just a little bit more if the dynamic shifts weren't in how certain things were played, but also in sound and like the nature, like how bombastic can you get and how can you rein that in, and what do you do with the gray areas in between. But there was still a lot of interesting shit done here from a musical standpoint that I don't want to take anything away from it. I did enjoy the song. I'm just stuck on how much I enjoyed it and don't know that yet. And like I said, that will come with this, with the information you're going to provide and probably another handful of listens.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I think, as I said before, there's a lot of full stuff, and this would not be the first track that I would pick thinking musically Andy's going to love this. However, it is an important track within the whole mess that is the full, and I think it's good for you to at least hear it. I don't expect you to fall in love with it at all, but so there's a lot of history to this, and it's quite interesting as well. So I think you'll get a kick out some of the factoids as opposed to the gitoids that we already heard. So there are two versions of this song available, apart from live versions. Firstly, the original is a very strange recording on the album Total's Turns. Now, this album really is a live album, which contained a lot of their early singles, and there's 2 studio tracks as well. They did that sometimes when they do a 3/4 live album. They put in a few studio tracks that were oddities or whatever, and New Puritan being one of them. It is about as lo-fi as you can get. So, you see sometimes toddlers have those sort of plastic cassette players with an attached microphone that's made out of plastic. It sounds like it's recorded on that. And all it is his voice and a guitar, which again sounds like a toy guitar. And that's it, nothing else. It's pretty. So Marky Smith claims the song was recorded, in quotes, at home, during which said home was attacked by a drunk, which accounts for the tension on the track. I think the drunk might be himself. But anyway. So the version you heard is from the famous Peel session, 16th of September, 1980.
Oh, John, real quick, I wanted to say something else about the fact that it was part of a John Peel session. There was some sort of reference to John directly in the lyrics. I think I caught him, and it was something about, was it something about records or music or something like that? And okay, so one, it made me laugh because I'm like, is he talking about John Peel? Because like I knew that he was kind of like a famous, person in the industry. And then also it just kind of made me laugh because I it was talking about records and John, and I thought of you instantly as well. So there you have it. I know it's not spelled the same, so he wasn't talking about you, but it just made me laugh because direct reference there.
Well, he famously said that his favorite ever track was Teenage Kicks by the Undertones, but his favorite band was The Fall. And apparently John Peel met Marky Smith just once, very briefly at something or other, bumped into him. And he was like, and Mark Smith went, yeah, whatever, and walked off. And so, I mean, this is the guy who did more for his career than anyone else, probably. But that's Marky Smith for you. So, yeah, this is quite a famous Peel session in terms of, Fall's output. On the ever-changing carousel, that is the Fall lineup. Now, we've done other Fall songs, obviously, and all about the band and stuff, so I won't get into that. But just to confirm who the players were this time: Marky Smith on vocals, the wonderful Mark Riley on guitar, the very good Craig Scanion on guitar, the fantastic Steve Hanley on bass, and Paul Hanley on drums.
Are the Hanley brothers? Are they brothers?
Yes.
Okay. And you know what? It warrants saying that as the song, the last 2/3 of the song, the bass really started to stick out to me a lot more and do a lot of the playful little minor dynamic things that the guitar was also doing. And I really appreciated that. So he does deserve his flowers because the bass got good as the song went on, for sure.
He's a very good bass player, and the more you hear of later and later for you, To give you some context, at the time of this recording, the #1 single in the UK charts was "Feels Like I'm in Love" by Kelly Marie. boo boo, boo boo. And the number one album in the charts was Telecon by Gary Newman. And the evil grocer's daughter is Prime Minister of the UK. Already, she has cast millions of people onto the unemployment scrap heap, but is yet to truly rip out the heart of the working class community in this green and pleasant land. Over in the shipyards of Gdansk, it is the eve of the formation of the Solidarity Independent Trade Union. So that's what's going on. Don't know why, but I thought I'd say that. So previous Fall tracks that you've heard are from late mid period of the Fall. So Blindness was 2004, Wolf Could Old Man was 2008, and Lost in Music 1996. So there are different eras of the band, and it's worth knowing this, that a lot of people prefer the Bricks era, which is after this. Some prefer that later run of the early noughties. A very large section of Fall fans believe that peak Fall is sort of 1980 to 1982, maybe even the first 4 albums. And this is one of the key tracks from that time, even though it doesn't appear on any album. It was released as part of a double 7-inch single EP. And that was Kicker Conspiracy, Wings, Container Drivers, and New Puritan. The second track, Wings, was in a fan vote, was voted a favorite Fall song of all time. Container Drivers and New Puritan were both Pure session songs. And that's seen as one of their best outputs, that Kicker Conspiracy EP. Now, in early 1980, the drummer from the Fall, that current drummer then, Mike Lee, quit. So they needed a new drummer. And so 16-year-old Paul Hanley had an audition, and he spontaneously came up with the rhythms that you were listening to during his audition. Never heard the song before. Marky Smith just started singing. So this is how it happened, according to bass player and big brother Steve Hanley, from his book, The Big Midweek, Life Inside the Fall. Is a fantastic book, actually. Anyone who's fans of the Fall probably already read it. But so I'll just extract from this. Now so some guy turned up, reckoned he was a great drummer, and he played one thing, couldn't keep time, and reckoned his wrist hurt, so got rid of him. Now it's our Paul's turn. Mark asked him to play along with New Puritan, a song we've just started on, to see what he can bring to it. Mark starts reciting his lyrics, less song, more poem. Paul finds a rhythm to back it, using the hi-hat in an unexpected offbeat way, which fits the unusual meter of the words. It's just Mark and Paul for nearly a minute before the rest of us join in, and it almost sounds like he's playing 2 drum kits. One by one, we add more tension to it, bringing no respite until that edgy sound of existential dread begins to fill the room. We're all hardcore fiends marching through the apocalypse, refusing to die. And then, when it feels there is absolutely no way out, Paul brings the song to a sudden climax, and we all know we're onto something. The whole thing's enough to send you over the edge. So there is
incredible anecdote, though. 16-year-old kid coming in, never hearing that, and just laying down that really cool, interesting drum. And again, what makes it really impressive is that, like, he's doing it to what is mainly just a lyrical delivery, it's not even singing really, and there's no guitar to help you find your way around and lay stuff against it. It's just really cool that he just knocked the socks off.
Impressive. So there's a website called the Annotated Fall, which I've referenced before. Now he writes, I don't know, 800-900 words just on how important this song is, and the meaning of songs, what songs contain, what songs become, and your perception of what songs mean. It just goes on for fucking ever. But anyway, I've really boiled it down to a little bit to what he said about this, which I think is quite interesting. So he says that it is a fearsomely intense performance, one of the most intense of the Fall's career, in fact. Lyrically, this song is the single most foundational song for the interpretations I have essayed in the notes of this site. Blah, 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 making what they are, etc., etc. I I won't go into that. But he does say that the New Puritan, the song, is riddled with ambiguity. So it's as if Marky Smith seems never to fully decide whether Puritanism is his credo or his target. That's because it's kind of both. He's putting out these edicts, as you say, this manifesto. At the same time, he's targeting certain people, which could call Puritans as well. So it's this double-edged thing. So, hypocrisy is another thing, and this sort of blurred lines again makes it quite interesting. The song is narrated by the Puritan in his role as witch hunter and avenging angel, but some of the characters that arouse his disdain seem fairly puritanical themselves. It becomes clear that the narrator has no patience for vegans, straight edges, which I didn't know this, but is a subculture associated with hardcore punk scene, followers of which abstain from alcohol, tobacco, recreational drugs, and promiscuous sex.
Never they often mark the back of their hand with like a large X as well.
Oh, for fuck's sake. So vegan straight edges and or anarchist punks, or for that matter, people who take their record collections too seriously. So lyrics. So he starts off with actually Mark Friday, who sings New Puritan et Domini. New Puritan et Domini. Don't know why. Apparently, the Latin's wrong as well. It's the wrong clause, but case, sorry. But anyway, so then Smithy starts, and I have got some notes here to help because some bits are quite interesting. The grotesque peasants stalk the land, and deep down inside, everybody wants to like big companies. Bands send tapes to famous apes. Now, apparently, John Peel said the following on one of his shows a few years later. I've always thought they were having a go at me in that, all that sending tapes to famous apes. Vanity, though, why should they? That's the fall, because obviously that's what bands did. Male slags, male slates, famous apes. Water, cater, now great thoughts. The whole country is post-gram. That's a reference to Speed and their album, which will follow after this, Grotesque After the Gram. Echoes of the Past. Hail the New Puritan, righteous maelstrom, cook one. And all hardcore fiends will die by me. All decadent sins will reap discipline. New Puritan, this is the grim reefer, the snap at the end of the straw. That is my favorite line. With a high grim quota, your star karma, Jim. New Puritan, New Puritan. The conventional is now experimental. The experimental is now conventional. Great t-shirt. It's a dinosaur cackle, a pterodactyl cackle. In LA, a drunk is sick on Gene Vincent's star on Hollywood Boulevard. Just to notice that the rockabilly pioneer Gene Vincent is one of Marky Smith's most frequently mentioned musical heroes. And they have covered songs by him, Rolling Down a Say Mama, Race with the Devil and White Lightning. Vincent has got a star on Hollywood Walk of Fame, but it's on Vine Street rather than Hollywood Boulevard. Walk of Fame comprises 15 blocks of Hollywood Boulevard and 3 blocks of Vine Street. Ha ha, ha ha. Stripping takes off in Britain's black spots. Apparently that's to do with a newspaper headline, but I don't know. And perhaps a Bernard Manning film as well. But anyway, the Kensington White Rastas run for cabs. This I have seen. New Puritan in Britain. The scream of electric pumps in a renovated pub. Your stomach swells up before you get drunk. Now, the electric pumps is a reference to the growth of keg beer in Britain that was very prevalent around the late 70s and early 80s. Basically, pubs were replacing those hand-drawn beers with ones that we can dispense quickly under pressure that you see nowadays via pumps. Needless to say, the new beer was nastier and gassier, hence the stomach swelling. And also corpses do that as well.
Yeah.
The bars are made of male slags. At 10:35, they play Send in the Clowns. 8 breaks and then, but it's clowns. So Send in the Clowns is obviously a song by Stephen Sondheim from A Little Light Music. This refers to the laws, licensing laws that stipulate really early closing times in Britain back then. Customers were allowed 10 minutes only to drink up and then they had to leave. The police enforce this quite often. So a lot of pubs have goodbye songs to indicate to the customers it was time to bugger off. In this case, it was Send in the Clowns. So I think it's lovely. You imagine that in
Yeah.
a pub, it's sad blokes. Why don't you ask your record dealer how many bribes he took today? So on August 1980, so only a month before this, Grenada's TV World in Action program alleged some record companies were falsifying the charts by obtaining fake sales returns from record shops. According to the Times, in the same month, bribes of free records, satin jackets, and bottles of wine, amongst other things, were being offered to these shops. My second favorite line. What do you mean? What's it mean? What's it mean? What's it mean? What's it mean? New Puritan, New Puritan. Hail the New Puritan. Out of hovel, come coven, come oven. And all hardcore fiends will die by me, and all decadent sins will reap discipline. New Puritan, New Puritan, New Puritan. New Puritan, New Puritan, New Puritan, New Puritan, New Puritan. I curse the self-copulation of your lousy record collection. New Puritan says, coffee table LPs never breathe. New Puritan, New Puritan, New Puritan, New Puritan. New Puritan says, New Puritan. Discordianism, claims to venerate the goddess Eris, the Greek god of chaos and discord. Although how seriously the whole thing is meant to be taken is an open question. For instance, a Discordian is required to, on the first Friday after his illumination, to, in quotes, go off alone and partake joyously of a hot dog. And it ends with New Puritan, New Puritan, New Puritan. So that's the lyrics. Interesting. I will say this about the song. You find this with a lot of songs of his, that they're a mixture. He puts in certain references which are reoccurring themes. So some of them are social commentary of the time, some of them are his opinions, pointed observations, digs, because there's kind of a surrogate character that he is. It's fascinating, and I don't think he can come across, especially if you see later versions of the Fall, as this, this rambling drunk in a pub sort of shouting the latest horse racing results or something. But there is a lot more to his lyrics, and I think some of that, there's a touch of truth into that towards the end. But yeah, there's some of his lyrics are really interesting and rhythmics, and this song I recognize musically is really, really basic, but it is this, what they're doing really, rather than creating a song per se, it's almost like an atmospheric soundtrack to his delivery of this sermon,
this diatribe he's going on.
Yeah, exactly. So in that way, the guitars and the drums work fantastically well, and the bass, as you say, in terms of creating that tension. And you do think that he can almost proclaim anything at certain points, because it's sort of building and building. So yeah, this is really seen by a lot of people as one of the top echelon, top 10, maybe top 5 full songs for that kind of reason. But it's not a deep dive. Well, I suppose it is, but you have to dive into it to get the most out of this song.
Yeah,
it's not an instant one-time reaction song, as it were. So we understand all that.
Yeah,
just
for
little...
sure. You were talking about, and we've talked about, like, the lyrics themselves being an interesting point of the vocal delivery and everything. But the interesting thing to me is the duplicitous nature of the narrator. Which is a whole nother thing. Like, it's like this Russian nesting doll of interesting thing about the vocals, and like the further down you get, you can drill into the specific lyrics. But on a broader scheme, just this idea of telling the story as both the hero and the villain, or the pro and the con, the dark and the light, to this one subject matter, or this talking about, the music business, or, musicians, or the state of music, or whatever. And you lump all those things in together. It's just interesting that he's sort of towing the line, or stepping over both sides of the line, and blurring who he is in any given part of the song, depending on what he's saying, which is really interesting and cool too.
Yeah, and I mean, I rather jokingly said about the context of what was going on at the time, but 1980 was a tipping point. It was a dawn of a new decade, but musically and socially, things were changing as well. And when you get that sort of tipping point, you get people pointing out what's right and what's wrong. And again, that's interesting. The background of like Thatcher being established and what was going on in the country musically, it was starting to spark off in different directions. This post-punk thing became other things as well. There were almost this hangover from punk where the original sort of punk bands that came in were DIY, do it yourself, freedom, anyone can do it sort of thing. And then there became these rules that followed afterwards, which I think were kind of made up by other people, that it can only be punk if it's this or that, the other. And it became quite rigid. And we saw in a recent reaction the sort of kickback from that with someone like John Lydon forming Public Image Limited and what he was going to, a magazine doing the same thing and going off and doing their own thing. And obviously Marky Smith and the Fall did their own thing in a way, and that constantly developed and matured into other things along the way. But there's a little snippet, very small snippet, but it's quite interesting. So he actually did, Marky Smith did comment on this title and concept in an interview in Sounds magazine in July 1981, so not long afterwards. He said, part of the interview, this is a snippet, it's just like in California Über Alles by the Dead Kennedys, liberalism which turns into fascism. That's a good song. The situation in Northern England is similar. Although Northern England has always been socialist, nothing productive ever came of it. They think about a change for the better, but all they ever do is work, work, work. And this way, they obviously support the situation. Maybe Tony Benn is the English Jerry Brown. Now, you may not know who Tony Benn is. Anthony Wedgwood Benn. He was a hereditary peer who then gave up his peership to become an MP, and for decades worked as an MP on the very left of the Labour Party. He was an interesting guy, had some interesting ideas. I think at heart he was a decent bloke, definitely, but not everything he said was correct. But he was honest. I give him that. I had a look into this, so I didn't know who Jerry Brown was. So in 1978, the Dead Kennedys' first single, California Über Alles, painted a picture. Well, I know the song very well, but it painted a picture from the perspective of the then governor of California, I think it was, Jerry Brown, of a hippie fascist state, satirizing what they considered his mandating of liberal ideas in a fascist manner, commenting on what Jello Biafra saw as this corrosive nature of power. Apparently, some years later, Biafra then went back on and said, actually, he wasn't as bad as I thought he was.
No, I mean, they're always going to have that. There's one thing about liberalism here is that sometimes it gets perceived as like this nanny state, where it's like sodas can't be this large, they must be this small. Cigarettes are going to be charged at $15 a pack as opposed to $7, and taxation will go to health services to combat it. So they're like, well, this is America, isn't it? It's a free country, isn't it? I want to drink as much soda as I want, to smoke as much cigarettes as I want. Don't be. And I understand, especially when you're young and you're like, this is a nanny state and this is fascist. You can't tell me how much of one thing I can have and not the other. So I understand it, but it's funny as they mature and they look back on it, they're like, yeah, maybe it isn't great that everyone's out here smoking cigarettes and drinking sugar-packed 32-ounce sodas. And, there's two sides to every coin.
America's a free country until you get a chronic disease, and then you have to sell your house. And then it's not a free country anymore. No, it's a very expensive country.
It becomes very capitalist then, doesn't it? Yes.
So, no one's got the right system at all.
No, you're right
in
there.
any country. So, I thought this would be an interesting track for you to listen to, and I will give you some more musically challenging full songs down the line, which
do it. I mean,
your teeth into.
Yeah, it's sometimes it's not even a matter of like it's challenging, but it's not like it's just a matter of taste, I think. You know what I mean? And pushing the boundaries of one's taste, and also for me trying to put myself in a world that predates me, and how music was then, and how you have to respect the evolutionary chain of everything, and each link in that chain matters and is important and propagates the next and is propagated by what preceded it. So you can't just be like, oh, that's from then, that's so. You can't look at music like that. You can't look at anything like that. So it's just for me, it's just as much about the history of music as it is about the music itself, which is why I enjoy doing this. So bring it on.
It's like both of us trying to understand this sort of, oh, this is this new skiffle sound that causes seismic, ruptions in the musical fabric of the time and everything. It's just a guy with a fucking washboard. I don't get it. But it is, as you say, context completely. Brilliant. Yep. All right, I should wrap things up. Thanks for listening to Andy. Folks out there, calling all full fans, tell us what you think. If you like this song, hit the like button. I happen to think it's rather wonderful, but I'm sure there are people who perhaps don't. So please drop us your comments and tell us what you think of this track, of the Fool, of the Enigma wrapped in a bottle of vinegar that is Marky Smith, and any other Fool stuff. Drop some comments about perhaps tracks you might. I've got an idea of about 4 or 5 Fool songs that I think that I'd like Andy to listen to, but we're open to suggestions. So tell us what you think. And we'd love to hear from you. If you haven't subscribed, please do. And more of this juicy content will come your way. Bibs not included. That being said, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see all of you on the next episode of the Audiophiles.
See you later, guys.